and this is where it gets a little sticky. He was in and out of court 3 different times. And each of those times could have been sent back to prison, could have been, or at least held there, locked up, until they settled the matter.
Both Jake Haro and Rebecca Haro in the hearing in their prison jumpsuits. This is video just in the pool.
But beneath the surface of this desperate search, investigators were beginning to notice something troubling. The parents' story wasn't adding up. Details shifted, timelines contradicted, and within 8 days, that missing child report would transform into something far darker. A double murder charge against the very people who claimed to be victims. This is the case of baby Emmanuel Haro. And before you hear another word, I need you to ask yourself a question that will haunt this entire investigation. How do you prosecute a murder when there's no body? How do you seek justice for a child when the only people who know the truth refuse to tell it? If you're passionate about justice for the most vulnerable among us, kindly hit that subscribe button right now. This case needs your attention, and Emmanuel deserves to have his story told. Let me take you back to where this began. Cabazon, California, a small desert community nestled between Palm Springs and Riverside County. Population, barely 4,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and a missing child becomes everyone's emergency. Rebecca Haro, 41 years old, placed that call to police on the evening of August 14th. Her account was specific, detailed. She told investigators that she and her husband, Jake Haro, had left their 7-month-old son Emmanuel in their vehicle outside a grocery store. When they returned just minutes later, the baby was gone. Car seat empty. Baby vanished. The response was immediate and massive. San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department launched a full-scale search and rescue operation. Helicopters swept overhead with thermal imaging cameras. 9 units tracked through the surrounding desert terrain. The FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team joined the investigation. For 3 days, the public watched as Rebecca and Jake made tearful pleas on local news stations, begging for their baby's safe return. Rebecca's voice cracked as she described her son. Those bright eyes, that infectious smile every 7-month-old has when they're just beginning to discover the world around them. But behind the cameras, behind the emotional appeals, investigators were doing what they always do in these cases. They were looking closely at the parents themselves. And what they found changed everything. Jake Haro, 32 years old, had a criminal history that should have sent immediate alarm bells ringing through every agency involved. In 2018, his then 10-week-old daughter from a previous relationship had been rushed to the hospital with injuries that told a horrific story. Multiple broken bones, healing fractures in various stages, a skull fracture, brain hemorrhage. The medical evidence pointed to one devastating conclusion: chronic, repeated abuse of an infant. Jake Haro was arrested and charged with willful child cruelty. But here's where the system that's supposed to protect children began to fail. Despite prosecutors recommending prison time, despite the severity of the injuries, despite that little girl being left permanently disabled, unable to walk, confined to a bed for the rest of her life, the judge made a decision that would have catastrophic consequences. Judge Dwight Moore suspended Jake Haro's prison sentence. Instead of bars and concrete, Jake received probation and was ordered to attend a child abuse treatment program. Let that sink in for a moment. A man who had inflicted such severe trauma on an infant that she would never walk again was given a second chance. And now, 7 years later, another one of his children was missing. By August 18th, just 4 days after Emmanuel was reported missing, investigators' suspicions had crystallized into something concrete. The parents' story had too many holes. The timeline they provided didn't match physical evidence. Witness statements contradicted their account. But there was something else, something that would become the foundation of the entire case. Rebecca and Jake Haro were not cooperating with investigators in the way you'd expect grieving, desperate parents to cooperate. They weren't providing straight answers about their movements that day. They were changing details of their story. And most critically, when detectives pressed them about specific locations, places where Emmanuel might have been taken, the couple became evasive, misleading investigators about where they had actually been. This is where the second child abuse conviction becomes relevant. In 2024, Jake Haro had been arrested again, this time for being a felon in possession of a handgun. His probation was violated. But once again, the consequences were minimal, brief jail time, then back to the streets, back to his family, back to another infant child. Child Protective Services had been involved with the family. There were reports, concerns, intervention attempts. But Emmanuel remained in the home. On August 22nd, exactly 8 days after Emmanuel was reported missing, San Bernardino County Sheriff's detectives made their move. At their residence in Cabazon, Jake Mitchell Haro and Rebecca Renee Haro were placed under arrest. The charges: murder of their 7-month-old son, Emmanuel Haro, and filing a false police report. There was no kidnapping. There was no mysterious stranger who had taken a baby from a car. The people who were supposed to protect Emmanuel, to nurture him, to be his entire world, they were now accused of ending his life. But here's the prosecutorial nightmare that was just beginning. There was no body. Emmanuel's remains had not been recovered. Search teams continued combing through vast stretches of desert terrain. Investigators used advanced radar technology, cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating equipment. They had what one official described as a strong indication of where Emmanuel's body might be located, likely somewhere along the I-60 corridor east of Moreno Valley. But strong indications don't equal evidence you can present in court. And without a body, the legal challenges of proving murder are immense. On August 27th, Rebecca and Jake Haro made their first court appearance. The hearing lasted less than 5 minutes. Both were represented by public defenders. The judge set bail at $1 million each, essentially ensuring they would remain behind bars as the case progressed. Riverside County District Attorney Mike Hestron didn't just file charges that day. He held a press conference that was extraordinary in its directness and its anger. Hestron laid out what he called overwhelming circumstantial evidence against the parents. He revealed that investigators believed Emmanuel had been killed sometime around August 9th, 5 full days before he was ever reported missing. For nearly a week, while Emmanuel's body was somewhere in the California desert, his parents went about their lives, maintaining the appearance of normalcy. But Hestron saved his harshest words for the system itself. He directly called out Judge Dwight Moore for the 2023 sentencing decision in Jake's previous child abuse case, the one involving his daughter who would never walk again. If Jake Haro had been in custody where he belonged, Hestron stated, Emmanuel would be alive today. Those words hung in the air like an indictment, not just of one judge's decision, but of every failure point in a system meant to protect children. The probation that should have been prison. The minimal consequences that should have been accountability. The second chance that became a death sentence for an innocent child. Legal experts watching the case identified the prosecutorial strategy taking shape. Without a body, Riverside County would need to build their case on circumstantial evidence, forensic analysis, digital footprints, witness testimony, and the parents' own contradictory statements. There was also speculation about a potential deal being offered to Rebecca, immunity or reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Jake and information about Emmanuel's location. This is standard procedure in cases where prosecutors believe one defendant has more culpability than the other, or when recovering remains becomes paramount. On September 4th, both defendants entered their pleas, not guilty. Rebecca Haro maintained her innocence. Jake Haro maintained his innocence. And somewhere in the vast California desert, a 7-month-old baby who never got to celebrate his first birthday, who never got to take his first steps, who never got to say his first words, his body remained unfound. The legal battle was just beginning. To understand this case fully, we need to confront the uncomfortable truth that Emmanuel Haro's death was preventable. Not in the theoretical sense that all tragedies might be prevented if circumstances were different. Preventable in the concrete, documented, systemic sense. Let's track the failure points. Failure point 1, 2018. Jake Haro nearly kills his infant daughter through sustained, brutal abuse. The injuries are so severe, she will never recover, never have a normal life. He's arrested, charged, convicted, Failure point 2, 2023, instead of prison, Jake receives probation. The judge disregards prosecutors' recommendations. A child abuser walks free. Failure point 3, 2024, Jake violates his probation by possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. The violation results in minimal jail time. He's released again. Failure point 4, ongoing. Child Protective Services is aware of concerns with the family. Reports have been filed, but Emmanuel remains in the home with a convicted child abuser. Failure point 5, August 2025, Emmanuel Haro is dead. His parents are charged with his murder. This cascade of failures represents more than individual mistakes. It reveals systemic flaws in how we assess risk to children, how we sentence child abusers, how we monitor families with documented histories of violence against the most vulnerable. District Attorney Hestron's public criticism of Judge Moore was unusual in its directness. Prosecutors and judges typically maintain professional courtesy even when they disagree. But Hestron broke that protocol because he understood something crucial. Emmanuel's case wasn't an isolated tragedy. It was a preventable death that resulted from choosing leniency over protection. How many other families are being monitored right now where similar risk factors exist? How many children are in homes with parents who have previous convictions for child abuse but received suspended sentences? How many second chances are we giving to people who have already demonstrated they're willing to harm helpless infants? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the questions we must demand answers to if we're serious about preventing the next Emmanuel Haro. As I'm recording this, the search for Emmanuel Haro's remains continuous. Investigators have narrowed their focus to specific areas, but the California desert is vast, unforgiving, and capable of keeping secrets for decades. The legal proceedings will unfold over months, possibly years. Rebecca and Jake Haro will have their day in court. Evidence will be presented. Witnesses will testify. A jury will deliberate. But regardless of the verdict, regardless of whether Emmanuel's body is ever recovered, one truth remains absolute. A 7-month-old baby is gone. A child who should be crawling right now, babbling, exploring the world with that pure curiosity that every infant possesses. He's been taken from that future. And we, collectively, as a society that claims to value children above all else, we failed him. We failed him when we gave his father probation instead of prison. We failed him when we didn't remove him from a dangerous home despite red flags. We failed him when we prioritized adult second chances over child safety. Emmanuel Haro deserved better. His sister, the one left permanently disabled by her father's violence, she deserved better. Every child in a home with documented abuse deserves better. This case should force us to confront hard questions about our justice system, our child protective services, our judicial philosophy around sentencing. Are we truly protecting children, or are we performing protection while leaving them vulnerable to the very people who should love them most? I don't have easy answers, but I know that Emmanuel's story can't end with just a court verdict. It has to end with change, systemic, meaningful change in how we assess risk, how we sentence child abusers, and how we prioritize child safety over adult rehabilitation. If this case has affected you, if you believe children deserve better protection, let me know in the comments. Share this video. Make some noise, because silence is how we got here, and silence is how the next Emmanuel Haro will be failed. Kindly subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more investigations that matter. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we expose injustice and demand accountability. For Emmanuel Haro, may the truth finally come to light, and may justice, however delayed, finally be served.